Makes a bad noise, doesn't it?
My older 1 year.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mayor?
How are you?
Hi there, how are you today?
How are you?
Good, good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr.
before
Chair.
we started,
We're trying to.
I was trying to ask Commissioner Lindley, how does it feel, or what is her thoughts when a little short guy like me walk up to her and look up to a tall girl? And was it really true that on her mind she was thinking of me as a little twerk? And she claimed that she did. And so as I start this meeting, I just wanted to let you know that, I was feeling a certain way because those tall girls looking down on a short guy like me. So,
And I'm so glad that that's on the record.
yes, sir.
Ever. Back on. Because now I'm going to do the wave to Tom back there that he can actually start recording so that didn't actually make the TV. This meeting is officially called to order, and I'm now going to welcome everybody and also let them know that our microphones are a little different than we're used to, so you may need to bring it a little bit closer. They're just something different, and I was told to ask each one of you when you speak to just bring it closer to you. Mr. Pengree, if I can pass it up to you.
Yes, absolutely. Two quick things, Commissioners. If I could point your attention to the screen, and we will hit this a little bit more later on, but today is also the soft launch of the new Economic Vitality website. Joint city-county effort we're very proud of, but that's what you've been seeing scrolling along the screens here in the chambers. We're extremely excited about it and all of the various attributes and interactivity that it very easily and with great flow has incorporated into it. With that being said, we're going to probably switch over to PowerPoint to run the meeting. And Mr. Chairman, the only on number 1, agenda modifications, staff is requesting that we remove from the agenda item number 8.
Okay, item number 8 is removed. Now we have Advisory Committee Chairman's report. Neil, would you come up and give us a report?
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you to Commissioner Proctor. I was trying to figure out how to work the word twerk into my comments. He took care of that for me, so I'm just going to cross that off. At the June 2nd CAC meeting, we heard a great presentation on the progress of the Office of Economic Vitality. Very in-depth conversation. It was, I think we all got a lot out of that. The CAC also shared feedback with one of the Vision First consultants that was working on the strategic plan. And there were several things that I guess stood out to me about that conversation. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of interest and excitement about the opportunities presented by a more unified approach to economic development. I don't have to go into a lot of detail on that because I think there are a lot of fairly obvious aspects to that. One or a couple of comments that I thought were very interesting, though, were as we continue to have conversations about how we want to move forward on the issues related to economic development, it's very important to ask, frankly, who's not in the room, who's not involved in that conversation. I know we see a lot of the usual suspects in meetings and strategic planning sessions, and even moving forward beyond that. But it's always important to ask, who's not involved in that conversation, and who can we benefit from hearing from, be it the nonprofit world, which we have so many actors here in the capital area, the disabled community, the conservation community, minority community, senior community, et cetera. So we would just encourage the consultants and, of course, the IA moving forward to just make every effort to hear from these communities. And I know that's the intention, but it's just always important to underscore that, I think. A third point that kind of coalesced around a couple of different comments that were made is I think we've all been to places that have healthy economies, but frankly we've looked around and said, yeah, we don't really have much desire to live here because they don't really have a strong sense of community, or maybe no balance between the built and the natural environments, or maybe little appreciation for the characteristics that made those communities distinct. So as we continue to grow and develop, and as we really focus a lot of community assets on economic development, it's just very important to not lose those resources in our community that we think makes it distinct, that makes it stand out in Florida and in the country. So let's ensure that we always protect those resources moving forward. We discussed the AIM Sync proposal, which you just had removed from your agenda, so I'll skip over that. And then note that finally we talked about the Debbie Lightsey Nature Park concept, which we are very supportive of. J.R. Harding, our wonderful disability rights advocate, provided some really great commentary about the importance of getting feedback from the disabled community throughout the entire planning process, from the initial planning to the design of our parks, and through implementation to ensure that everybody has access. And JR just gave a few really nice concrete examples of things that frankly wouldn't have occurred to me that I think are just very beneficial to think about as we work on our parks planning. So those are the main items that we discussed at the meeting, and as always, we really appreciate the hard work from Blueprint staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Next item.
Mr. Chairman, the next two items are informational items. Item number one, I don't think probably warrants too much review in this forum, but item number two, which is the Blueprint 2000 project updates, there are a few highlights that staff has prepared to go over, if you would so desire.
Please.
I'll turn it over to Charles for that.
So the photo you see in the slide presentation was the work of setting the spans. If you've been through there, that pedestrian bridge is really starting to take form. If you've been down there recently, you'll see the sails with the solar panels have been set in place, and it's really starting to look like the gateway to the south side of the community that we envision. So we hope to finish that in early August. Rains pushed us back a little bit, but we're rocking and rolling. So. We recently did the the ribbon cutting ceremony on segment 3C with the city in conjunction on FAMU Way. That's the segment between Wanish and Pinellas. And we can spike the football. We completed this little segment. We're going to run to the next one. So this is Capitol Circle. I don't know if you've been on that corridor, but it's really starting to take place. We've got 3 of the 4 bridges constructed. The old bridge across CSX has been demolished, and we're hoping to complete this project in December. There's a couple photos, but Magnolia Trail, later this fall, phase 1 will be completed under the direction of the county. The county is working with their consultants on the phase 2 design, and we are working with them to take over a little piece of it between Meridian Street and Adams, and are working with Big Bend Cares to do a JPA to complete the segment between Adams and Monroe Street in conjunction with their work now. So that corridor is really moving along. Segment 3D, we are still working with the city on the finalization of the pond design at Gamble Street. We hope to move into permitting in the next couple weeks, and we'll be back to you in September with a more up-to-date on segment 3D. And when we're complete with the design and move into construction on segment 3D, we'll reconcept segment 4 and bring that back for discussion at a later time. So that's just the exhibit that she's got shown of segment 3D. We won't waste any more time with that one, but we will come back. Cascades Park, just wanted to provide a brief update. We've worked on the trellis design at the Imagination. That's increasing the shade opportunity at the fountains. We're waiting to get permits on that. Same thing with the additional shade at the Discovery Gardens kids play area. We'll hope to move into construction of those either in late summer or early fall. The Smoky Hollow Barbershop, we are working on the finalization of the site plan and permits, and are waiting on Lively to finalize the restoration efforts on the structure itself. So it's coming along a little longer than what we were hoping, but it's coming well. The stage weatherization, Christina and our design team and I met this afternoon. We hope to have some concepts for that weatherization. One of the things that we needed to do, if you recall, was there was some conversations about whether the weatherizations would have any impact to the sound wall. We took that back to the sound experts with Acoustics by Design. They said that the weatherization that we were proposing would not have any impacts on that wall, so staff is moving into the next item, working on the design of the wall. We met with a consultant and hope to begin surveying that next week and move to design and permitting as quickly as possible.
Any questions, commissioners, or comments? Commissioner Maddox?
I may completely be in the minority here, but I think we have new information when it comes to the wall. With the possibility of redevelopment of the property immediately behind where we would place the wall, that we could require in a development agreement for whomever developed it to put in sound barriers and incorporate those sound barriers into their development in a seamless manner. I think that would be a much better result for the neighborhood than building something that quite possibly would be a detriment to the property around it and/or would have to be torn down to accommodate the development of the property behind it. It seems to me that the neighborhood is most interested in having less noise, and if we can find a more efficient way to do that other than the wall, it would be incumbent upon us to do it.
It's true.
Commissioner Dozier?
Thank you. I'm getting used to these microphones, as you suggested, pulling it closer. Thank you, Commissioner Maddox. I will say that I wasn't going to bring any questions up about this because the majority was pretty loud last summer, even though I had wanted to spend more time exploring our options. If we remember, the wall only covered a very small portion of the houses that are affected by the sound in the first place, so there was other mitigation that we would have had to consider at some point, probably. So I started hearing some things about the apartments, or the concepts there. Of course, that's a city issue. So I'm very glad you brought this up, and I would welcome, if it was, the general sense of the board, an opportunity to look at other options. I think you make a great point. If their development is there, they would have to do sound mitigation anyhow, probably for their tenants or residents or owners, whatever that might be. There might be other opportunities. The only other two things that I'd mention are, one, it's been almost a year now since we took that vote, and I know the neighborhood is very much, they thought we were going to move forward more quickly than we already have. Now, recognizing that staff has already done a good bit. I mean, if you were ready to move next week, that means you've accomplished a lot, so appreciate that. So I think the neighborhood should understand we took a vote, staff's been working, so I'm kind of wondering what the city's timeframe might be in approving those concepts, things like that. But we're looking at long-term solutions here, and if there is something like that coming, getting some feedback, I apologize.
Move that second one away from you. That's what's doing it.
See? Sound man at the other end. Thank you very much. So if there are other options, I'd like that. The only other thing that I don't think we ever really explored was how the sound of the train would affect the park if we built the wall. That wall was going to be pretty close to the tracks, and I've always wondered about the reverberations of that sound back into the park and back downtown. We may create another problem there. So if we're going to go into a direction where we think about a developer, or you all do, I'd just say that question of, sound absorbing material, I think we should explore that. So I would welcome some other method to address this issue.
Commissioner Lindley, then Commissioner Deloge, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I was actually quite happy to hear that there's some activity that might help, with this, and if it's in addition to or instead of the wall. I don't think, I know there's impatience to try to, accommodate the neighborhoods. I don't know that it sounds like the staff is already looking at alternatives, and we are, to some extent, dependent on what that proposal is and how it goes forward on the city. I don't actually see any need in adjusting our position right now if we're kind of rocking along and see how this all comes together. Maybe by the next meeting we will have a clearer idea.
I'm sorry, just for clarity, Commissioner Lindley, my impression from staff was that if we didn't make a change today, they're moving forward with construction. I mean, that, there is no other.
On design without.
On
without-
design? Okay.
Okay, I'm
Well,
sorry, I didn't understand
even if it's
that.
design, that's still expending a good amount of money and staff time on designing something.
So-
If we have questions, it would be my instinct that we save
So you
that
do
money.
feel- Okay,
Yeah.
I misunderstood that you were ready to.
Yeah, we're ready to go start survey, which would be the very first component of moving into design
Yeah.
next week.
The commission,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I understand. Well, I do think that we owe it to get the very best possible long-term solution. And if the wall isn't it, we do need to, I think, spend a little more time finding out what our options are. I mean, I know it's a little bit disappointing to the neighbors, or it probably will be, but they want a good solution too.
Commissioner Deloche.
Yeah, good ideas, and I think what I'd ask is, can we just get some, it sounds like we're dealing with some of the information, not all of it. Can we get, maybe, I don't know what the city's appetite is for maybe amending what it's going to look like long-term, and that might be not even a starter, so we don't need to presuppose what they might want to do. So I'd say deferring it for a meeting is not going to break anybody's back, I don't think, is it? As long as we realize we're not.
What I was going to suggest, if I could, is a motion that this body doesn't take any action on the wall until we can get a briefing from the city as to possibilities of development of the property behind there and any and all sound barriers that would be part of that. Have them come back, give a report, have the two staffs get together, and then we can make an informed decision.
I'd second that. And I just think that we need to telegraph clearly to the people that are concerned about this. This is by no means a delay tactic. Frankly, we're looking out for your best interest. You want to have a product that's going to work, and that you're not going to, we're not going to spend all this money, build it, and then tear it down and have to end up with something that doesn't work. So,
Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Commissioner Zipper. I would support the motion fully. I would just ask Commissioner Maddox if, just going to keep moving that down there, if we could have an update in September, regardless of the status of the development project. I mean, development projects can take a really long time. Since that is a year from the original
September's
vote,
fine.
Okay.
even if it's preliminary from the city, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Any other comments? Otherwise, we have a motion on the floor. I'm sorry, Commissioner Proctor.
Mr. Chairman, not to beat the horse down, but do we have a statute of limitations or something in terms of how much hand-holding that we have committed to, quote, the neighbors on this listening and hearing and audible stuff? Looks like we have, and everybody deserves justice, but look like we have spent an inordinate amount of empathy to sound being, extraordinarily correct and proper, and attained at just the right pitch for every single person that raises a voice. And, truly, at 6:05 a.m., there are no sound barriers at the airport when that plane takes off every morning in some of those landings. And I have long-suffering patience and all of that, but I think that if we can bring the plane in for a landing pertaining to these neighbors and the sound issue.
I think we're getting very close to that, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. That's what I'm trying to say.
Mr. Chairman, could we also, as part of bringing this item back, include in it what the complaint history has been since the park has opened? So if you're able to correlate maybe an event with the number of responses and the nature of those, whether they've gone up, gone down, is it a particular point at which it happens? Because out of 365 days a year, if you bring a report back that has 10 complaints out of that total period of time, I think we need to assess what that means and what value we put on it. I also think that the document should include a much more sort of comprehensive set of considerations for this wall. So for instance, if you build an uninterrupted wall for however many feet, what are the increased chances of graffiti and graffiti abatement and the costs associated with it? Are there requests for the wall to be extended to cover more areas that may or may not help? How scientifically reliable has the assessment been on both sides of the wall for impact? It's consistent with, I think, the concern that was earlier expressed. But I think we acted in response to clearly what folks have identified to be an issue for them. But, our jurisdiction is bigger, wider, and have to be more comprehensive than I think a limited view.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Something on point, or can we go ahead and move to a vote?
I was going to, one last quick comment.
Please.
I appreciate all the additional information the mayor has requested, and I think some of that might have been included last summer, but probably not all of it. But as on the county side, I may hear, I think Commissioner Lindley and Maddox may, as at-large commissioners, but I may hear a little bit more from this neighborhood than some of those on our commission. I think one of the big concerns is that we have said for multiple years we will do sound mitigation, and we have not done that yet. So it's not just the number of noise complaints or things like that I think we should be concerned about, but we have suggested and taken votes along that line. Now, I mean, this is coming from someone who strongly argued against the wall. I personally don't think that's the best solution we've got, and didn't mind saying to my friends in Myers Park, let's wait longer. So, I want to recognize that is as much of a concern, if not more, as the actual sound complaints themselves, and we need to, I think, honor that too. Yeah.
Well, just on point, Mr. Chair, the point around haven't done anything to sound mitigate, I actually think there have been some things that might be helpful to include those. But I think your point is to the construction of the wall itself, and that's been there for a year.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I meant infrastructure-wise. We've done a lot with the decibels and the speakers and things like that, but infrastructure-wise.
I think this body's clearly demonstrated through the numerous conversations we've had that we are concerned and we plan on doing something. In light, though, of the potential opportunities that exist that might change the way this is done, I think it is prudent for us to take a look at. Having said that, motion on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Next item, consent, I believe.
Yes, sir. Next two items are wrapped in consent, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve.
Consent?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent passes unanimously. Next item.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, it's a great pleasure to begin presentation on this. As the IA will recall, it is less than 3 short months ago that this body gave the direction to stand up a new, vibrant, and fully engaged Office of Economic Vitality, and we did just that. We did just that the very next day, and we've made a lot of great progress. And part of this, go back one slide, if you can. Part of this report quickly is going to give you a brief overview of some of the successes we've already had to date, and it's also going to put you in direct contact with the consultant that was hired to help craft for the first time in our community's history a long-term strategic plan for economic vitality or economic development in this manner, in this actionable manner. But clearly you see our daily mission. We want to assist our community to grow, to constantly innovate, never to rest on its laurels, and to have the greatest experiences for its citizens and for its visitors. Okay, next. We'll never get too far away from this graphic. It's a busy one, but it really is all-encompassing, and it clearly shows commissioners and members in the audience who we are trying to partner with, the layers of accountability and transparency and planning and oversight that is included within this structure, and the interactivity, the fact of the matter being that there is never one actor in terms of a community that is striving forward with vibrancy, with vitality. There are many different partners, there are many different owners to the success stories that we hope to achieve, and certainly that coalesce around all the great resources and assets that our community has. So just a moment on that. Okay, so pretty quickly off, we had our first success point, and proudly so. Came before both the City Commission and the County Commission, so won't spend too much time on it, but we were happy to hit at least a double, if not a triple, right in the first month of existence, and you can see the significant impact that Project Presidential had and will continue to have in our community. I will tell you that in regards to outreach efforts for business, and as I discussed before, not a single day, not a single hour was lost in terms of connectivity with our state partners and our local partners working those projects beginning on March the 1st. We are, in working with Vision First and then working with the new office itself, constantly reaching out to the business community and the various co-creators of economic vitality, some of which were on the prior slide, to make sure that this new office has the highest level of engagement within our community, and really higher than it's ever been. And as I think was presented at the last IA meeting, our goal is to become an accredited institution. We would be just the 4th, I believe, in the state of Florida to achieve that. And to get that and to do that, you have to be individually accredited. That takes training, and that's a commitment that this body has made uniquely for the staff of the Office of Economic Vitality. A word on research and business analytics. Commissioners, the long and the short of this slide is analytics drive economic vitality in the realm of economic development. You take two communities that are similarly situated. One has replete business analytics, no different from good business, and you take one community that does not, that is sort of the more static, old school approach. Oh, we've got this, we've got that. No. The one that has the analytics and the data will win every time. And in the world of economic development, it is truly a process of elimination. You are seeking to not get voted off the island as long as you possibly can. This new component, this new division within the office, is going to be the secret sauce, I believe, to our success moving forward. Of course, we will also be the one-stop shop, and uniquely from this office, for that kind of resource to any business person, to any citizen. If they're not able to drive it from the website, which is the goal, or they need something a little bit extra, or maybe some interactivity with their competent and qualified staff, we are going to be just a click or phone call away, and happy to do those things. Next. Okay, just a word on this. Since we last met, we were humbled by both the City and County Commission's confidence in moving and functionally consolidating the Minority Women Small Business Enterprise offices into the Office of Economic Vitality. That was immediately, well, it was done effective May 16th. So your team is up and running. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the budget section. As you are aware, the next big step is to issue a request for proposal. That should be released this week, and the goal, Commissioners, is to have a recommendation for an outside consultant to be selected to do that mission-critical work, and that would come back before you at your September IA meeting. Next. Okay, so a word on budget. We had a heady mission and a large objective, I would say, at the last meeting, and that was we expect far greater outcome in terms of economic development, and we want to utilize the same level of funding that the city and county respectively had utilized on this purpose. And gratefully, under the leadership of the county administrator, city manager, and through my office and with this team, we put together a budget plan that does exactly that. So we committed to you that we would, and this budget proposal is not a dollar more than what you have previously expended. And as we roll this out and get ready for the advent of the 2020 dollars coming online, that revenue source coming online. In addition, I will thank each body. You took a step further and realized that while the corpus of that money may not start flowing in until 2020, we probably should prime the pump and create a seed fund so that should there need to be local incentives in advance of the $90 million coming in, that we have that opportunity. Each city and county committed $500,000 and/or are in the process of doing that, and really just another invaluable tool and another example of how committed both of your bodies in this IA is to true economic development. So thank you. The next big component that we're very proud of is our new website. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, it's doing a soft launch today. And I want to turn it over to the OEV Deputy Director, Christina Paredes, who, just a word, she's over effectively operations and engagement. She has been phenomenal during this initial period and really helped ensure that everything we committed would actually happen and happen even better than we hoped. So Christina, if you could walk us through the website.
Thank you. I just wanted to take you a quick tour through our newly soft-launched website today. It is highly interactive and really state-of-the-art. Within 3 clicks, it can get you to almost any research that we anticipate are going to be highly utilized on the website. And before I walk you through it, I want to take a minute to thank the website team. This has really been a true team effort between the county and city. Everybody worked collaboratively to get us all here to where we are today, and I especially want to thank Charles Brown and Bobby Freese on the city IT side for really implementing it and building the website, county and city public information for working on the logo development and look and feel that you see before you, Lindsay Volpe, who joined our team a mere 2 weeks ago and has really been a true asset to bring the website to life, as well as Ned Cake with GIS. He developed the story map that you'll be seeing today that'll help visualize some of the assets in our community. So now I'm just going to take you a moment and walk you through some key features. The big point, this is on our homepage right here, right after the pictures that you were seeing here. This map here lets people know where Leon County, Tallahassee is located in the southeast. You can see our connectivity to Jacksonville, Atlanta, Orlando, Tampa, and Pensacola. We're calling these widgets along the side there. Here's a closer shot of those. These are the breadcrumbs through the website and will really help you navigate through it. Data is key, and like Ben said earlier, it's what everybody's looking for when they come to your website. And we highlight some key stats on our homepage. We'll go through the data center in a little bit that really takes you in a deep dive into all the statistical information for our community. This is our About Us page. Again, it features how the Office of Economic Vitality plays in the economic development ecosystem. We also have the strategic planning information available here. And on this page too is a link to take you to the survey that we are officially unveiling today, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that here in a minute. This is our resource section. It highlights everything that we have
Christina,
available.
could I ask you to speak into the microphone a little bit better? That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. This is our resource section. Here we have information on our innovation sector, incentives, workforce needs. The Office of Economic Vitality really has you covered. And if you can't find what you're looking for on the website, you can reach out to us and we'll be happy to work with you. One of the really awesome features that we're launching too is the ability to search for buildings on your own. And if you can't find what you're looking for, we are just a phone call or an email away, and we will walk you through and help you locate your new address for your business. Data. This is our data center. Right here, it highlights our key main most sought after data points in 4 areas: quality of life, economic development, workforce, and so those statistics are all here. For a deep dive, you can download individual data sets here, anywhere in a PDF or an Excel. This was something that we heard of a lot when we were at OUEDI, the ability to download data for anybody in the community and site selectors on their own without having to call our office. So this was something that was really important for us to launch forward.
What was that acronym?
The University of Oklahoma, was the test?
Yes, where you heard, okay, that was one of your trainings.
Yes, exactly.
Sorry, yeah.
And
Mr. Chair to say that too.
And our business and data analytics team is, again, a phone call away to help you interpret any of that information that you need. A newly launched feature here is the ability for heat mapping construction trends. You can see anywhere from 30 days to 5 days of your residential and commercial permitting phase. And we're currently developing something similar to map out our economic development trends. So you will see that in a future on our website. Next up is our story map section. This is a really neat feature that was developed by Ned Cake. And this really expands upon something that we did for our award-winning penny sales tax website. We mapped out our districts for our community, our school systems, incentives areas, the connectivity for our region. It is really a state-of-the-art website, and we're very proud of this. And again, we thank the GIS team for their efforts. And I mentioned earlier that today we are unveiling the community survey. This is accessible on our website, so if you take 5 minutes to walk you through 10 questions, it populates up in all your answers to Vision First advisors, and we're really looking to push this hard as we solicit feedback from the community at large for our long-term strategic planning process. And Ben, with that.
Thank you. Yes, commissioners and the public, just again, resources, connectivity, and easy click-through. Our goal in developing this website with what OUEDI, which was just mentioned, Oklahoma University, which really is the longest standing training entity in the economic development field. What they taught us was you've got 3 clicks to make an impression, and if they cannot find it in that level of time, you're out, bluntly. And that's what they shared with us. That's what the site consultants shared. So this entire new initiative, really first of its kind in this community, was built around that knowledge and around that goal. So this is the opportunity. Clearly, as was discussed previously, what is going to guide all of this? It's a strategic plan for the first time ever, built collaboratively with those co-creators of economic vitality, and utilizing one of the best in the business, Vision First advisors, led by Gray Swope and his team, parenthetically, who happen to be based here and proudly in Tallahassee and Leon County, Florida. But on this slide, I call your attention really to the final approval in September 2016. Today, and Gray's about to get up, I'll introduce him in a moment. This will be your opportunity to hear from him and his team and see clearly what he has done thus far. But these are the goals in terms of what he's going to come back to you in September. This is the drive that we have. What we want is the creation, built collaboratively and collectively, of what is that mountain on the horizon that is our goal, your goal, if you will, commissioners, for economic vitality. And then very clearly, what are the metrics based on industry best standards and best practices? What are the metrics to objectively identify how we're moving forward with that? Clear vision and how we can best engage with stakeholders and ensure a return on investment to our citizens who have invested in this model, in this structure, and in this revenue source. So, next. Whoop. So that is the website. I just wanted to highlight this for a brief moment. OEV, your Office of Economic Vitality, forbusiness.org. I encourage you to check that out. And with that quick note, next. It is truly a privilege to introduce Gray Swope up to the microphone to engage you directly, Commissioners.
Just as he comes, I want to compliment y'all's team for moving, what appears to be seamlessly from one set of infrastructure to another set of infrastructure. And while there is clearly a lot more work that has to be done, and Mr. Swoop, all that you'll share with us, a huge compliment for, I think, for our community, that it feels like there wasn't a beat missed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Agree.
Well, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Gray Swope with Vision First Advisors, and have with me today Melissa Medley, who's a principal in our firm. Senior advisor Nancy Blum Heights is also here as well. And we also have with us a special guest, Jake West, who's hanging out with us this week with one of his grandparents. But I'm not going to identify that, let you figure it out, because I'll be in trouble if I said grand something of another. But we're glad to be here, and I'll tell you, just to weigh in on what this team is doing, it's been fun. This is an energetic group. We are really enjoying getting to know them. Ben, you made me feel old. I went to Economic Development Institute at University of Oklahoma in Norman. I finished in 1986. That's been a long time ago. But and things have changed a little bit, as you can expect. But yeah, I'm glad to see you guys doing that and take it seriously and getting the best learning that you can as you start this office. I want to say thank you to this group for having the faith in our firm, our group, to help put together this Economic Development Strategic Plan. We're doing work in 16 other states, and this is real honor and privilege to get to do something in our home. And we live here. This is where our business is based, and we're very excited about this opportunity to work with you on this project. So I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you for that opportunity. So let's talk a little bit about what we, real quick, what Vision First Advisors, just to give you a quick background. I know we've shared this in our individual meetings, but just as we're introducing this group to a larger audience, just real quick, we do location advisory work. Some people call that site selection work. So as Ben was sharing about analytics on the front end, it's very important. We don't see if you don't have the right analytics. From that standpoint, with our clients, if you're not have the right data on the website, if you don't have the right data that we can find easily, there are other places that do. So it is an out of sight, out of mind piece, and I commend you in getting that up and running quickly. We also do economic development strategy. We do that for states, we've done that for regions, and we're doing that for communities. And so we get to see a lot of best practices. We also get to see a lot of things that aren't working. So that experience and bringing to the table here is a combined 90 years of economic development marketing experience on those levels. So we're excited to be a part of that team and bring that. So our scope of work, as Ben was alluding to, this is an economic development strategic plan. And I say that because this is a community that does a lot of planning, does a lot of study, which I commend you in doing that. But this is an economic development strategic plan for the Office of Economic Vitality to have as its blueprint to move forward, and how they're going to work toward building a vibrant economy and building off the assets that we have. This plan will include alignment of so many resources in this community, the coordination of those, and using the city and the county both to help in that as well. We're going to look at goals, objectives, tactics, and more importantly, measures. That has been a very big piece in this scope of work as well. We're also going to take a look at the current target markets that you're looking at, and then we're going to look at that and try to see the direction you're going and look at the marketing and messaging that goes with the targets that you decide upon. So what have we been doing? The first thing, as far as what we do, is our project approach. It's been our experience that you have to get input of the voice of the customer from the very beginning. It's critical that you do this. We find that if you don't do this piece correctly, the odds of successful implementation at the end of the day are going to be greatly diminished. So it's very important on the front end to get the voice of the customer. And I'll tell you, we're successful implementation, but we're looking for perceptions. We're looking for things that have impacts, and we're looking for other factors that will be crucial as we develop the effective strategy for your community. So far, since you've engaged our firm, we've finished over 30 meetings. We've met many of you at this table. We've had great discussions. We've met with some of the people in the audience and had great discussions. We've talked to small business leaders. We've talked to elected officials, community leaders. We've talked to large employers, a good cross-section of our community. Through these meetings, we've also facilitated discussions. If you look at the facilitation in the individual meetings, we probably have touched over 150 inputs or voices in the community into this process. We still have about 20 more of those to do. We're continuing to learn as we go through that process, and we're beginning to kind of look at how all this comes together. As Christina said, the website, you're having a launch tomorrow, and on that will be a online survey. That's a piece of that. And I hope that you will get out to your constituents and get out to the community as a whole, that survey piece is there, because we're going to welcome everyone's feedback into this process. And so we'll encourage people to take the time, a quick survey, and provide that feedback. So just a quick personal observation. You know, we were talking about the community as a whole, and I started, thinking, so if we were going to build an economy in a community. You want it to be vibrant. You want it to be a place that generated jobs, meaningful jobs, disposable income. You wanted to create economic wealth in your community. You wanted to take it to the next level. What would be the things that would be important if you were just putting on a piece of paper to building this community? And you started looking around, there's not a thing on the list that I would put on that list that's not in this community. This community has every one of those pieces in place. You look at it from entrepreneurs, talent pipeline, technology, you can read this, I'm not going to go through that, but this community has the pieces of the puzzle to elevate its economic development game. That's exciting to me. So as we go into the next piece of this, this is the challenge. So as we look at our findings, I want to just make the point, these are findings. These are findings and observations. These are not recommendations. They're not our opinion. This is just us observing findings of the community and as we move forward. So the first of those findings is, and some of these aren't going to surprise you, we're siloed. A lot of these resources are siloed and they're institutionalized. We also found there's a lack of shared vision amongst many of the stakeholders that we've talked to. Again, no surprise there. And then the one that kind of really surprised me is that there was no common definition of economic development. And often, when you started talking about the definition of economic development, it would be kind of viewed through the lens of the own organization and how they viewed their own mission. And that became the definition of economic development. And so as we move forward, those are some of those findings that we will have to work with in our strategic plan and how we pull those pieces together. I will tell you, don't be worried about that. Having done this work myself, 30 years, communities, this is not uncommon. There are a lot of places that have those same issues. It's all about working together and the need to integrate the voice collectively toward one mission. So I'm not concerned about it, and as we go through, this process, we will look for ways to coordinate all those resources. The other thing, though, that when you start talking about that is a little bit is how you have the voice of the business customer in the process. So an economic development strategy, I think it's important that you have the economic development process in that, or voice in that model. So your model today, through the Economic Development Coordinating Council, you have probably, it's over 20 different organizations in there, and I will tell you that you have 20 plus different missions. That's going to be a challenge in how you incorporate that. Rightly, wrongly, you have as many missions as you have organizations. And so the key as you move forward, and the challenge will be, how do you set economic development strategy that utilizes the good work of those organizations to one shared strategy for the community as a whole? And so it would be part of our strategy, how do you align that? And so that you can work toward that without doing that, then I'm afraid that sometimes it just becomes a funding source to support just a mission of the organization, but not you as collective as a whole. And so I think that's an important piece of our work as we move forward, as we look at that and how that works. One thing we heard over and over again, especially from small business and entrepreneurial community here, is lack thereof to capital, lack of access to capital. Some cases, I think it's perceived. And then in some cases, I think it's just that the businesses aren't necessarily ready to the point that they can access capital. They're not doing the things that they need to get there. And we heard that from some of the people that are doing those type missions and that type work here to bring the entrepreneur up to the next level so they are able to access capital. But we heard that throughout. We also heard, no surprise, the reliance on public or the government for jobs in our community. They're not very diversified in the number of jobs in our community. I think one of the critical factors in listening to that was talking about state government in particular and the number of leases that come due in 2019. on private buildings here in our community, I think is something that we need to be thinking about. Again, that's a finding. And that as we look at the big business down the street, that's an $80 billion budget, or across the street, I should say, from here, then we have to think about how that impacts us in those leases if they're not renewed or if their businesses or agencies are moved elsewhere. And I think that's something that we look at as we move forward. Also, we talk about technology and research assets that are not being optimized, and boy, this was just, we spent time at many of these places. Again, numerous global ranking assets in this community. And the ability will be able to connect the dots and how do you use those better? What is the value proposition at the end of the day of these assets to economic development? And just blown away by some of the things that we're doing, that we're doing in this community, but it's not every day in our forefront of economic development strategy. The other thing we continue to hear is airport challenges. Again, accessibility, cost, also not being used as an economic development tool. But I want to tell y'all, Chris Curry is doing a great job out there. I really appreciate his planning, his thought, and the efforts that they're doing there. That was, as a user of our airport, I was really glad to hear what Chris and the work that he's doing in developing the master plan. So that's a real positive there, even though that was one of the findings. But I think we're doing some things there that can help us in the future. So one of the things, as I told you, we look for too is what are the perceptions, what are the impacts, and what are factors? The new acronym in our office is the PIF factor. So if you're looking at the perceptions, impacts, and other factors that influence strategy, we heard both good and bad on education. There's a lot of great stories of education in this community, and there's also challenges in this community that we have to address. The same thing, retention of talent. We have talent. Talent comes here, talent leaves here. And so that's one of the things that we learned a little bit more about. Again, the next three we heard in negative sense. Those crime, affordable workforce housing, and community not being business friendly. But I will tell you, in some of these discussions around those topics, I know there's a lot of work being put into this community from you and others on those issues. And often I think about, we all have our horror airline story. And what we love to do is love to lead with, boy, you can't believe I spent 9 hours at such and such airport. I got, plane was delayed over and over. Some of these stories, we heard a lot of those. And so we got to do a little digging and find out perception, impact, and what is the factor. Because it is impacting a little bit in our decision, in the decision makers and the ability they look at this community. So we have to address them, whether they're fact or whether they're perception. And so I put those on the air because that will be part of the strategic plan in the end, is that we'll look at those factors and how they impact the economic development strategy. Also, the other positives, the amenities, natural resources here that people are using. I think sometimes we underestimate what is all around us that can be used. Again, I go back to that list. If you're putting together the ideal community for the vibrant economy, you'd add those amenities there. They're here. And we have great resources for living, so to speak. And people like living here. In general, everybody we talk to likes living here. We've heard story after story about people moving here and never leaving. And we've heard about, the retention of talent. And that people, if they're doing their job right, in most cases, they are able to retain the talent once they get them here to experience this community. So as we move into the next steps, I just share with you graphically kind of what we're doing. We just finished, like I said, some of the interviews, but I want to be very clear that our interviews are not the strategic plan. Again, the strategic plan comes from doing a deep dive into the research, looking at those perceptions and what are facts and what are perceptions. What are the impacts? What are those factors? And then as we take our years of experience and kind of looking at best practice of others, start formulating the strategy. As I said, we are doing the level setting. Again, you guys have got some great data that we've already been using. We were able to get a sneak preview of what's going to be on your website. There's some great information there that we're already using and looking at the community and how we go through these next steps. But over the next 2 months, we'll be doing a deeper dive on some of the barriers. We'll be doing, as I said, the research and fact-finding, and then looking at it from the eyes of competitiveness. How does it really rank? These things sound good to us, but at the end of the day, if they're not competitive compared to someone else, then it really doesn't make any difference. We're going to be looking at the competitiveness of that. When I see you guys back in September, on September the 12th, exactly when the plan's delivered, I can tell you pretty much with great certainty, these are some of the things that are going to emerge out of the strategies. We will have, of course, the definition of economic development for the Office of Economic Vitality. We'll also talk about diversification of the economy, how to go about that. We'll also talk about aligning the resources. We'll talk about coordination of efforts toward competitiveness, as I just mentioned, optimizing the structures, entrepreneurship. You're going to hear that in small business growth in our strategic plan as well. The support of the existing businesses, technology research, and a very targeted approach to economic development for new business, as well as looking at talent pipeline. All of those will end up in the plan at the end in some shape or fashion. So the next steps, as I just mentioned, basically continuing our work out in the community. We plan to use Ben and his team, to meet Ben and his team often to talk about what we're finding and start then testing some of the strategies, refining, so that when we come back to see you on September the 12th, you have the plan in place and we're off and running. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, this is mainly for information. There is a need to accept or not accept, so if there are any questions or comments for the speaker or for anyone, let's go ahead and do those, and then if we could accept it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few years ago, I spent a little time talking about the nature of God, the nature of the Holy Spirit, the essence of life, and questions like that when I was in seminary. And that can be a very abstract topic at times in seminary to translate and try to concretize. Economic development in this discussion is somewhat abstract to me. And I'm thinking that with the future of this money, that I would like to see this money geographic specifically to South City and Bond. I don't see those words down here, but I think that concretely with this economic development, I love to see a Marshall Plan for Bond in South City. That's specific. Some of these words remind me of being in law school. And, you know, how is a consent and agreement reached? Is it a handshake, a wink, a nod? Yeah, it's like going to an auction, you know, when does somebody say, yep, yep. This is abstract. What I'd like to see in this plan is that somewhere specific, we got some money going somewhere and we know what that purpose is. Secondly, what are we going to do with the co-joining of the MBE offices and our commitments to fund studies, MGT type studies, I forget the name of it. But we had about $250,000 from the county, disparity, is that it? Study, and the city had some money. Are we gonna do one lump sum study now that the offices have been joined together? Is the disparity study gonna occur? Is it gonna fall through the crack? But how are we going to keep those entities eligible and legally doing what they have to do, that what their operations, when they make decisions, is legally respected? And I don't understand the pathway forward for keeping whole and keeping the pedigree properly authorized, and I'd like to know in the coming, when this information comes back, what is the timetable? How are we going to certify and make sure these combined offices are both too legit to quit? But in terms of the future and this economic development stuff, I want some money, and I want some for Bond, and I want some for South City. And then thirdly, the issue of mental health. We need to attract and bring to North Florida something that would make money and provide a service that does not exist in our community. And I really want some of this money to be used to establish an industry that links into available and existing infrastructure, as the speaker talked about, the hospitals and medical schools. But we need some private interest here. And I think that some of this money need to be focused on mental health and all of the offshoot development. So those are three things I wanted to input, sir. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Dozier.
Quick question, I'm sorry. I thought Commissioner Proctor had a couple more minutes there. I shouldn't have eaten candy. Thank you very much. This was great to get the progress update. I'm hearing a lot of good things from the interviews. The Innovation Park Board really appreciated it, so thank you all very much. And I'm glad, even, I should say, at Innovation Park, we know Lindsay very well because she's been out with us for a year and was fantastic. So we hated to lose her, but for her to go to OEV, I just wanted to give her a shout out. We're very excited about that too, so that's great. So the question Gray, you mentioned the EECC, and I think that committee, I mean, we had some folks ask us for additional membership in February 29th. And you mentioned, and I think it was a fair way of framing it, that it's a group of organizations that focus on this. I'm not sure, I haven't looked at the list in many months. I'm not sure we have one business owner on the list unless they're serving in a volunteer position. They're mostly executive directors or people affiliated with various organizations. So if I remember your schedule properly, you're supposed to bring your draft to them prior to September 12th. So I'm just wondering if there's any suggestions or if you think there's a need to have a different group, assemble a group of business folks or something to hear that draft as well, the same way the EECC would, and to give you a perspective on that, give us a perspective on that. I think that was a fair point, and I'm not sure we're in a position to reconstitute that whole committee or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just wondering if our staff, OEV, and our consultants would benefit, if we would benefit from the guidance to have a second group pulled together by you all of a lot of diverse business leaders or business folks to react to the draft as well.
Care to answer? Thank you.
Commissioner Dozier, I think your comment I appreciate. It's an observation, and as we were going through, I mentioned there were several missions of these groups, good missions. The concern is that when collectively looking at economic development as a whole, as a community, and what Ben and his team and this group want to work from, with those missions, would they be conflicting at it sometimes? Would they, the thing that worries me is that it just becomes a mission to suit a funding mechanism. I don't have a recommendation for you today. I'm telling you as an observation of that process and listening to the voice of the many groups that we've talked to so far, the real challenge will be, how do you come up with a vision and a mission that those groups can work collectively on that effectively utilizes some of the funds for economic development? And the business voice, your customer, for economic development, I worry is absent in that group. So I think it's something, you start planning, you study, then you do. And I think in this case, we probably need some more work, but I think that is something that we ought to think about and look at as we move forward.
And let me,
Commissioner, sorry.
I'm sorry, let me just clarify. What I'm hearing from you, I mean, I completely respect that and that's why I'm not suggesting any changes to the EECC right now. I would much prefer to wait until you go through this whole process and make suggestions should you think they're necessary or the staff can. I was just thinking about that schedule for this summer, that if you are already thinking that the group that we have designated to hear the draft is going to have a unique perspective because they come from all these organizations, would it not be in our interest to have a group that could have a really raw, in-depth discussion about that and give us some feedback on that draft from business leaders? Would that be helpful before we get to the 12th when we're...
Yeah, I think so, because, again, I'm not, that group is a great group of community leaders. And the missions by themselves are very, they're good things. There's nothing in there that you would say, no, we don't want that. Everything is good. But when you're looking at an economic development strategy, I think having that independent business voice and how this plan's going to impact us as a whole and make this a vibrant economy that gets us to the next level, it would be good to have that voice somewhere in that process.
Mr. Chair, I would love to hear from others. I'm not going to make a motion, but absolutely, I'm not suggesting anything, as I said before, to change long-term, but I think that might be a good thing to give our staff some direction. I don't think it's anything we need to appoint people to, but let them pull together a diverse group of business folks.
We're going to come back to that and have a
Thank you.
little conversation. Commissioner Miller?
All right, thank you, Commissioner Ziffer, Chair Ziffer. And thank you to Gray and his team, because I think they've done a fabulous job talking with everyone and gotten off to a great start. Here we are, and it's not, they've got months before they're finished. I wanted to actually add my voice to two things. One, Commissioner Dozier has touched on something that was concerning me, because I was interested in the fact that there was not a business owner, major person at least representing the chamber as a business in the community on the board. But it comes to my mind also that when we are talking about this, that it would be very important for people to attend that meeting with the EDCC when this report does go to them. And that touches on another thing that concerns me, which is the fact that we haven't, either one of us, put in our budgets implementation. So the way I figured this I was going to ask you how you see this rolling out in that regard, and you can answer that now or later if you want to. But fact is that I imagined that we would get the report, we would begin the conversation at that point, and then we would have a great in-depth conversation to find out what the actual implementation plans will be. And then I also wanted to recognize the fact that Neil Fleckenstein had brought up the importance of the overarching goal to really recognize the city for what it is and what its big assets are, and what, as far as quality of life is concerned. Because no matter what, whatever our identity is that draws people, as we saw from the report, most people they all seem to like living here. And this is a wonderful place to live. Well, what is it about this community? We don't want to lose the essence of that quality of life along the way as we go forward with our economic development plan. I'm so happy to see that we're where we are. I mean, the changes that you all have made, I think, are all very constructive and very positive. It allows us to go forward in addressing our economic development shortcomings at this point by an aggressive plan to get staffed up, make these plans now, do the strategic planning now, and then when the money begins to come in 2019, we'll be able to hit the ground running, just like we've always been able to do in the past with the projects themselves. So those two things, I wanted to make those points, and I also would like a word back from you on how you envision all of this rolling out after that meeting in September.
Any other comments? Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I'm late. I had problems with a tie.
You late? Covering for you.
I'm sorry I didn't have the privilege of the entire presentation, but as you all know, one of my top priorities as a commissioner and certainly as a member of this board has been that we make sure that whatever we do, that development is equitably distributed throughout the community. Speaking primarily about the Frenchtown and Southside areas and how we go about bringing economic development to those parts of our community that right now are lacking, seriously lacking in that regard. And so whatever plan comes forward, Mr. Chairman, I like Commissioner Proctor, would like to see some concrete plans of how we begin. And I know we're doing some things from both commissions, but I'd like to see a comprehensive strategic plan as to how we begin to drive development, specifically along the South Adams, South Monroe Street corridor and into the south side of this community. This has been long overdue in the 40 years that I've been in this community, and I don't know that we need another study to tell us where the issues are, but what we need now is some concrete action, and so that's what I'd like to see coming forward.
Thank you. Any other, Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This may be, I think, to Commissioner Miller's point around the operationalizing of the funding and structure. So I don't make the assumption that the only work that this group will be doing or that this Department of Vitality will be doing is implementing the Blueprint 2090 million by itself. For instance, if the commission and this group were to recommend a set of projects that would absorb the totality of those dollars, we still have to do economic development, recruitment, retention work. You all are still the established entity for economic development for this area. So the recommendation around standing that up and the ongoing funding support to make that happen, I'm hopeful that we'll get some thoughts speaking to not just the 90 million part, but also the long-term sustention of the department. And then, you know, just to Gray and the consultants, I'm probably most interested in seeing, and I hope this is a correct assumption, one of the things coming back will be after they've done a thorough analysis of what our community assets are, the drilling in on the targeted industry sectors. And it's for me very important because I think as you continue to do interviews and you hear from different voices, there'll be a million opinions about what we either are or aren't doing to recruit this, that, and the third. And I think the difficult work will be, I hear that, but this community is best positioned to take advantage of this. And then that ought to inform what, where we then put the incentives, the resources, so on and so forth. And then the other piece to me that will be interesting to hear back will be on this local or existing business support. You know, we have been criticized from this group or that group for looking as if we play favorites when you go and you help to prop up or stand at what may already exist. And to me, it's a little bit of an undervaluing of some of the incumbent businesses that we have in this community that may be on the cusp of whatever that next level growth business development opportunity is, but all of the supports that exist are targeted toward the recruitment of what's being brought in versus the growth of what's pre-existing. And I know it's a hard thing to figure out. It's probably much more art than it is science, but places have probably had to struggle with this. What do you do when you've got an existing company that wants to grow and their growth could be the difference between, you know, a bunch of new jobs that are high paying and the ability to keep that company here versus the shiny object of we're out recruiting and have attracted this new company that's bringing 50 jobs. Right. To me, they are both valuable, and maybe one more potentially valuable than another if it's pre-existing.
Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Proctor, and then I'm going to, if you don't mind, wrap it up. One more comment.
Mr. Chairman, one of my concerns is that we, in our community recently in Florida, BP had economic development occurring, And with the BP dollars dispersed to universities, local governments, people with houses that live so many yards from the Gulf, some of everything was economic development, the BP. And I don't want our money here to get created as if this is another BP cash giveaway and it ain't got no focus. That's what BP did. We sit at the same table as the CRA, and we're accused, and it's been said that whoever bring a sheet of paper with an ask, and we'll give them some money, and it's like we loosey-goosey. So here's a new pot of money, in addition to the CRA money that we have a great broad variety that shows that we're broad in our thoughts. But I'd like to see something focused out of this money. And these studies and people who we pay to come tell us how to think, I honestly don't need that many people to help me do that. Me, I don't. I mean, I take that most of you don't. So we can create the ideas at this table, but to focus what we want this money, this pot of money to do for us in advance. That's why I suggested a concrete something is if we step into health, mental health, it is just the potential ripple of that is an area I hope that these great pundits will come back and look at and review. And I think that for area geographic specific in need, great need, Commissioner Richardson has pointed out several areas, and I echo the same in that south side. So that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. I want this money structured, and I don't want it to work like BP oil or CRA. I want it to do something specific. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Dozier, and then we'll pass it back to Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And forgive me, quick comment. I don't think we can get away without saying the website does look fantastic.
It does.
Thank you. There was so much more information that came out afterwards. I just wanted to make sure that all of you knew. I mean, I'm pretty excited about that. I look forward to digging in. I'm sure we'll all share the survey. So thank you all very much for that. And just because, we're focused on some of these other issues, housing, things like that, I have it in the back of my mind. I mean, a lot of this data, as consultants have said, you said, Ben, we've had it for a long time. We just don't know, we didn't have quite the format of fitting it into programs that are going to have a big impact and different things. There's no one organization, no one policy that can solve it all. I would love whatever we see here, for example, to fold right into our joint housing meeting in October. It may be that we got to address those issues through a different angle, but we can use all this to strengthen that. So I'm excited about that prospect. So with that, Mr. Chair, if you're willing, for the amendment, I will make a motion for option 1, which is accepting the report, and provide the ability for staff to bring together a group of business stakeholders to reflect on the draft and provide us comments for the September 12th meeting as the EECC does, using their discretion, if they think that will be helpful.
Second.
Second?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Because then I'm going to ask Ben, is that adequate for you to be able to come back with what's been requested?
Yes, absolutely. No, great direction. Just wanted to thank each commissioner if the time is right. I could go into probably the various points. I will just say the following. I think that the structure and the focus, to utilize your words, Commissioner Proctor, are as strong in this system as that which we've seen. These consultants have been directed from day one that the specificity and, frankly, the science, to utilize your words, as much as the art, which too often describes the work of economic development, should be utilized as part of this plan. We need clear metrics and goals. We need world-class data, and we cannot be everything to everybody. In other words, utilize the opportunity to absolutely separate the wheat from the chaff on what is a targeted industry sector and what is not. What should we focus these limited resources with full transparency and accountability, and how should we best do that with specifics so that you can really chew on that. And the last comment is, yes, it was by design, Commissioner Miller, that we did not presuppose what the budget would be. We do think we have adequate time to whatever the recommendations that would be proffered and would ultimately be accepted by the IA. We do believe we have adequate time to achieve that, and we think that the budget proposal that we've put before you is a tremendous next step in that process. We welcome that input as well, Commissioner Dozier, of making sure that we're touching the business community, in addition to the Citizens Advisory Committee, in addition to the EDCC, et cetera. So.
What about the MBE? I didn't hear a point on the MBE. How was that going to move forward?
Yeah, okay, so the MBE, and I may have glossed over it too quickly in my presentation. That's coming back to you at your very next meeting, Commissioner. So the RFP for the consultant, you had mentioned MGT, they're a consultant example that does disparity studies frequently. They may or may not apply, but the RFP itself will be issued during the forthcoming week. We anticipate that we will have an agenda item for this body at your next IA meeting so you can select a consultant to begin that important work. It is that disparity study that will lead to the full consolidation of the Minority Women Small Business Enterprise Office.
Okay, and because the county has already authorized that money, it would not come back to the county for a vote as a process issue. It has been relinquished to you all's office. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, two things. One, being, and I'm sure because you and I have had this discussion, but just to make sure that the task force committee of business people that you put together is as representative as possible of the community without it getting unwieldy.
A high priority, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. And then secondly, I have heard recently some concerns about the staffing of the MBE offices, combined MBE office, or the lack of. And I know at least the city office, I had heard before I came to the commission, some concern that the office was not adequately staffed to the point where there was not staff that could go out on job sites and be actually on the site and observing what's going on the site. They were simply paper and pencil pushers in the office. And I think that was a big criticism of the office. And so when you come back to us with a report, can you talk to us about the staffing that's going to be needed to actually make that program work?
Absolutely, and I do believe we're going to be looking at alternatives to maximize the benefit and the impact, the positive impact of this program within limited resources that every program faces. But point taken, sir.
There's a motion and a second. Call question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
And by the way, thank you very much to your team, Gray. We appreciate it, and we're looking forward to September. You did a great job. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, your next item is the selection of a vice chair in accordance with policy. This would be a county commissioner for the forthcoming cycle.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
as
Commissioner
Maddox, it's my pleasure and honor to nominate Commissioner Mary Ann Lindley.
Second.
Commissioner Daly, you have
We're
something?
probably all going to do that, right?
Second.
I have a lot of friends.
Pardon me?
I have a lot of friends.
Clearly.
Yeah. We're enemies.
Just got 4 seconds.
Are there any other nominations from the floor? We'll close nominations. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed other than Commissioner Lindley? Passes unanimously. Next item.
Next item, Commissioners, is item number 7, adoption of Blueprint's internal control policy. As you may recall,
Approval. Second.
Any other questions, comments? Motion on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimously.
okay, noting item 8 was pulled. Item number 9, Mr. Chairman, is approval of the concept plan for the W. Lightsey Nature Park. This is an issue that drew significant volunteer work to see what could be done on this 100-plus acre parcel previously utilized and acquired for stormwater processing.
Move option
Retention?
one.
Second. Yes.
Approve the concept.
Oh, discussion.
Commissioner Dozier,
Sorry.
followed by Commissioner Miller.
You got a motion second, right?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that Commissioner Lightsey called me on the way over here because she had been unavoidably detained, and she was hoping that she was going to be able to make it, but, and I haven't looked for her, but if she's not here yet, it's not because she is not interested. She has attended several of the meetings that you guys have had already, and she's delighted with the park planning. And so on her behalf, I'd like to offer that she is very excited and supportive and is definitely interested. She did not want her absence to be interpreted as lack of interest. She's very excited. Thank you.
Good. Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to go back to Neil's comments from the CAC. I know there are some parks where we can't do as much accessibility as possible, but will that be part, and forgive me if I forgot that it was mentioned in there, I didn't think it was specifically, okay. So just wanted to make sure that that was taken into consideration in this planning process, and really appreciate that this may be an opportunity to accomplish a lot of those goals we can't in other places. Yeah.
There's a motion and a second for option one approval. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next
Before we
item.
move on, could we just take a moment and thank the local chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architecture, who really donated a lot of their time and efforts during the design charrettes. And I see Patrick and Steve Roberts back there, and Hilda. And I don't know who else I'm missing, but
Jeremy.
there we go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Ms. Calder, do you have anything I want to?
I just wanted to make sure that they were recognized. Thank you. They spent a tremendous amount of time, their own volunteer time, and we never would have gotten the product that we ended up with had it not been for them. So thank you all very much.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for stopping us, Charles. That was,
Yes.
we really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
they donated a lot of their time. We do appreciate it. And we think that the great plan that's developing was predominantly out of their leadership. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And stop me anytime. Next item.
Next item, Mr. Chairman, is a happy one for us. It's a request for approval of a JPA joint partnership agreement with FDOT to fund the construction improvements on Woodville Highway from Capitol Circle all the way up to Paul Russell Road.
Move option one, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Next item, Mr. Chairman, is item number 11, proposed fiscal year 2017 blueprint operating budget.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So easy, unanimously passes.
Just want to highlight a 3% reduction.
Yes, sir.
Across the board in the budget.
Yeah, and one thing we would like to point out to you is this is a draft, so it will come back to you in September for final adoption.
Do you pin that to say it could go up?
No.
I'm joking. I'm messing.
Or down, I mean.
Or down.
Only down. Item 12, Commissioners, your last item. Similarly, this will be coming back to you for formal approval in September, but this is your proposed fiscal year 2017 blueprint net sales tax allocation plan and 2017 to 2020 capital improvement plan.
There's no action required. This is just information only.
Correct.
Okay. Now we are on, I believe, citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens that would like to be heard at this time? All right. Without that, any comments, anything from the rest of the commission? With that being said, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Y'all got time to sneak out on that head, huh?
Yeah.
If we hadn't been done by 5 years, the mass exodus out the door.